Your Majesty, Dragon Link has taken over the format.
How can we help?
It is written, only a non-bricked hand can defeat Dragon Link.
Good evening, Jank enthusiasts. I'm MBT, and this is 10-minute testing. I've been a little cursed lately. I made the Junk Speeder video, and Jet Synchron was banned 2 days later. I set up the Makura video, and, well, they updated the text in the database. So I'm being very cautious this week. I imagine they're not going to ban Majesty's Fiend. It's back at full power, so it's time to take a look at Monarch. Before we begin, if you're on the fence about subscribing, let me sweeten the pot for you. Click that little button below the video and I promise to unban Brilliant Fusion so we can play the deck as Takahashi intended, with Seraphinite and Dark Witch. So here's the list, and I can hear the comments from here. Oh, keep yelling! A monarch cares not for the whims of peasantry. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course, the card by card. But first, this video is sponsored by Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck. Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck is an online strategy site for our mutual favorite card game. It's got a deck builder, card database, and a wealth of strategy articles. It's also where I post the Quarantine Series deck breakdowns, so give it a look at www.ygoprodeck.com. With that, let's mess with Monarch. Some of my favorite formats of all time are those in which about 4 decks with disparate strategies are all legal at once. And while it might sound like I'm endorsing TOS format exclusively, that's not actually the only time the game has been somewhat balanced. Following the release of the Monarch structure deck, the format consisting of PK Fire, Monarch, Cosmo, and Pendulum was exciting, interactive, and most of all, interesting. Unfortunately, in order to make way for the 12th wave of new Blue Eyes White Dragon support later that year, every one of those decks was utterly annihilated by the ban list, Monarch worst of all. Only now, after nearly 4 years, is it back to full power. And since then, things have changed. Domain doesn't hit nearly as hard when anyone with a Union carrier to spare can bring out a Blader, and decks that don't have the density of good cards to play between 9 and 12 hand traps have a hard time playing against, well, pretty much everything. That said, we're going to do our best. The biggest thing we'll need to correct for is Monarch's brickiness. Monarch bricks like nothing else. Unlike most modern decks, where all you need is a starter, Monarch needs to be able to find both a Squire and a Big Boy to accomplish anything. This means that power cards like Vanity's Fiend and Monarch's Erupt, cards that are strong provided you've already got the aforementioned playables, are usually just more mechanisms with which to draw a handful of unplayable garbage. For reference, I tried out Vanities, Allure, Dogman, Magician's Souls, and Erupt in different combinations, and none of them were much good at all. Every time we were better served by playing a deck that'll go off as often as possible than one with a higher ceiling and a 10% playable hand rate. So with that, let's get into the card by card. Firstly, the Monarchs. 3 Erebus, 3 Aether, our Aether target, Celagria, trust me, it is leagues better than Kuraz, and Majesty's Fiend. Next, our Squires, 3 Adia, 3 Adios, and a Mithra. Finally, our Spells and Traps, 3 Pantheism, 3 Tenacity, 3 Stormforth, 3 Return, 3 Domain, 1 March, 3 Desires, yes, it still is bricky enough, even with 3 Pantheism, and a bunch of broken one-ofs. 1 for 1, Rhoda, Foolish, and Called By. Finally, we're on 2 Prime Monarch. So with that, let's jump into the games. Our first match is up against Adamancipator, and ooh, God. Alright, let me try that one again. Our first match is up against Adamancipator. No, it still feels like poison coming out of my mouth. I am so sorry about the ban list. Okay, we're going first. We're going to lead with a copy of Tenacity, revealing the Aether in our hand. That's going to add a copy of Pantheism to hand. We'll activate the effect of Adia, getting an Adios, and thankfully it resolves. Afterwards, we'll activate the effect of Pantheism, and then do it all again. I'm starting to remember why this was limited. We're going to activate the effect of Pantheism in Graveyard, fetching a Domain and setting a return before tribute summoning a copy of Aether. We're going to tribute over the Adia so we can trigger in sequence the effect of Aether, the effect of Return, and the effect of Adia so we play around Ash Blossom. We'll add a copy of Erebus to hand and field before activating the Graveyard effect of Prime Monarch and passing back to our opponent. We don't want to telegraph the other Adia. Our opponent's going to lead with a copy of Tackle Crusader, which, unfortunately, actually outs the Domain. Okay, it returns to the hand, and in main phase 2, they'll go for an Analyzer. I kinda have to hope they don't have a follow-up. We'll go for a copy of Aether here, we'll activate Aether's effect, and the effect of Return of the Monarchs, adding from our deck to our Hand of Majesties for next turn, and for now, a copy of Celagria. We'll activate Celagria's effect, taking the Analyzer, and thankfully this turns off pretty much the remainder of the hand. They'll activate Miracle Rupture, bringing back Revival Golem, before passing turn. We'll bring back this copy of Prime Monarch before giving our opponent back this copy of Analyzer. We're going to lead with a copy of Aedios, summoning back an Aedea and activating its effect to summon an Aedios from deck. We are now sitting on 2 summons. We'll use one of them for an Erebus. We'll activate Erebus's effect alongside the effect of Return of the Monarchs and the effect of Aedea once again to get the Tenacity back. Afterwards, we're going to shuffle our opponent's copy of Analyzer back into the deck before activating Pantheism for a Stormforth. We'll fire the Stormforth and then tribute summon a copy of Majesty's Fiend, activating Domain afterwards and Tenacity to get a copy of March. I think this is probably enough BM. Nah, just one more piece. We'll activate Pot of Desires, go to 1 card in deck, and proceed to battle phase. This is well over lethal. Our second match is up against an old favorite of mine, Hero, and an old nemesis of mine, going second. Let's see how we fare against an established board state. Our opponent's going to lead with a copy of E-Emergency Call to get a solid soldier to hand. As long as they're not making Darklaw, I'm happy. They'll go for a copy of Stratos and activate its effect, adding a Shadow Mist to hand. After that, they'll fire off a Fusion Destiny in order to summon a Dystopia. Next, they'll activate the effect of Ferris in hand and the effect of Shadow Mist in graveyard. That's going to set a copy of Increase from deck and add a Plasma to hand. They'll activate Increase's effect, summoning a copy of Vion from deck, whose effect they will activate. They're going to banish this copy of Ferris to get a copy of Polymerization, which they will use for a Trinity. Jeez, I guess just to trigger the Solid Soldier before going into a Cross Crusader. That's going to bring back the Malicious. They'll activate Cross Crusader to get a copy of a Dusted Gold, then Malicious to summon itself from deck. Finally, they're going into a Plasma, activating a Dusted Gold for a Dark Calling, activating Dynatag, and passing. Dystopia plus Plasma. Okay, we're going to lead with a copy of Upstart Goblin. Next, we'll fire off this copy of Pantheism. After that, we're going to activate Pantheism to find a copy of Tenacity, which we will activate, revealing the Erebus in our hand. We'll go for Domain number 1. That's going to be popped by Dystopia, not surprising. We'll go for Domain number 2, and afterwards fire off a copy of Pot of Desires. We draw a couple of cards. Ooh, another Pantheism. I don't mind if I do. And Stormforth that Plasma away for a copy of Erebus. We'll activate Erebus's effect, shuffling the card in hand, because in battle phase we can walk over this copy of Cross Crusader, giving them an increase, but at end step, sending this copy of Dystopia to the graveyard by virtue of Fusion Destiny. They draw an E-Call off the top. Anything for Stratos, shoot. Okay, they'll activate Stratos' effect and chain the effect of Increase. Increase will summon from deck a copy of, unfortunately, an attack position Vion. They'll activate Vion's effect, sending a copy of Shadow Mist and using Shadow Mist effect to get another Dusted Gold. They'll activate Vion's effect for a Polymerization. I'll Aether here. As Aether is summoned, they'll chain Honesty. This is terrible news, because Celagria can only target monsters with lower attack. This means they will be able to out the Domain Lock and in main phase 2, unfortunately, make a copy of Malicious Bane. That said, shouldn't be too difficult to out. We'll activate Prime Monarch, summoning itself back at end step, and look what we draw for turn, an Erebus. We'll activate Domain, revealing the Erebus, and then normal summon the Erebus, activating its effect, and shuffling this copy of Malicious Bane back into the deck. Our opponent will concede. So it's time for game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Meta is a little bit loosely defined right now, but I'm pretty sure Noble Knight will be part of it. We're going first. We're going to lead with a copy of Aedea, that's going to summon an Aedios from deck, and thankfully its effect resolves. Afterwards, we'll normal summon a copy of Erebus, who's the hand loop deck now, and activate the graveyard effect of Pantheism in order to get a Tenacity to our hand. I don't like to telegraph Aether, but we have to do it in this way if we want to be able to activate Aether's effect and bring back Prime and Stormforth all on our opponent's turn. Our opponent's going to lead with a copy of Olivier and a Fire Flint Lady, summoning another Olivier. We'll activate Stormforth as they proceed from main phase, and we'll bring back Prime before going for an Aether, tributing our opponent's monster, and summoning a copy of Celagria, I guess daring them to continue. Unfortunately, they can't under Domain and pass back to us. We'll activate the graveyard effect of Aedios, summoning back Aedea. We'll activate Aedea's effect, summoning an Aedios from deck and activating its effect as well. We'll activate Pantheism's effect, giving ourselves a copy of Tenacity, then activating Tenacity in order to get a return. We'll activate Return, and then we will tribute summon a copy of Aether. We'll activate Aether's effect as well as the effect of Return. That's going to add a copy of Erebus to hand and summon a copy of Aether from deck. We'll proceed to the battle phase, and this should be well over lethal. So it's time for game 2, and while you never want to go second against the hand loop deck, if you do, you want your opener to look like this. No use getting smoke grenaded if there's nothing to take. Our opponent's going first. They're going to lead with a copy of Heritage of the Chalice. That's going to add my boyfriend from their deck to their hand. They'll then normal summon him and activate his effect, sending a Durandal to graveyard before special summoning an Olivier and making Isolde. They'll activate Isolde's effect, getting a copy of Godfini's Gearfried to hand before activating her second effect for 4. Oh my god? Are we getting Dark Warriored? They're going to bring back Plague Spreader Zombie and go into Link Cross. Is this what this deck does now? They're going to get 2 tokens to their side of the field. Afterwards, they're going to Synchro Summon a Tatsunoko and a Power Tool Dragon. Yo, this is pretty choice. Next, they're going to activate DDR, bringing back this copy of Plague Spreader before going into a copy of Charles. They'll activate Plague Spreader's effect, and then go into a Martial Metal Marcher, whose effect will bring back the Olivier. Afterwards, they'll make a Halka-Fibrax, getting a 0/0/1 from deck, and an Auroradon, though they don't have the zones to reborn the Deskbot. They'll get 3 tokens to their side of the field. Afterwards, they're going to Synchro Summon another Power Tool Dragon. This effect isn't once per turn? They don't have a discard for this DDR until they activate the graveyard effect of Phoenix Blade, bringing back Plague Spreader Zombie for what must be the 5th time this turn. They'll go into Roland and Savage Dragon, activating Savage Dragon's effect for 2 negates and Charles to take a card out of my hand. That's pretty choice. Thankfully, they choose the Tenacity. It's not like we have a monster anyway. For turn, we draw a copy of Return. Fantastic. We'll activate Pot of Desires and... oh, those are 2 good ones. We're going to normal summon a copy of Adia. They let it resolve. We'll activate the effect of Adios, and it resolves as well. Shoot! We'll activate Mithra, and I'm pretty sure I can chain block from here on out. I tried to activate the effect of Mithra, but I think I've missed timing here. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I might have just clicked no. I'm not very good at Yu-Gi-Oh! We'll shuffle back this copy of Charles and activate the graveyard effect of Pantheism for a domain, at which point our opponent finally pulls the trigger on Savage. A little late, don't you think? They must think they can OTK from this position, and given their hand, I'm pretty sure they are correct. For turn, they're going to draw a copy of Gamma. They're going to activate the graveyard effect of Phoenix Blade, and then activate Plague Spreader Zombie's effect, putting it back on top of the deck before special summoning a copy of God Phoenix Gearfried. We're going to go for an Aether. They will Borreload, but that's the last negate out of that monster. If we can survive this turn, we just might be able to do it. They're going to get over our copy of Adia, and unfortunately, GPG can negate during the damage step. They'll take our copy of Erebus and get in for a fair amount of damage. For turn, we draw... it doesn't matter what we draw, this card is completely useless. We'll activate Adios' effect in Graveyard, getting Adia. Adia resolves for Adios, and now they can no longer negate anything because we will be able to chain block. We'll activate the effect of Aether, activate the effect of Adia, and activate the effect of Return to get a copy of Erebus to hand. That's going to add back to hand a copy of Pantheism and get this fantastic monster from our deck. We'll activate Pantheism, and then we'll activate Pantheism's effect again. Back to 1, I'm telling you. We'll activate Tenacity, revealing our copy of Erebus before activating Stormforth and tributing the God Phoenix Gearfried before it's able to negate anything, shuffling back the Borreload Savage, and walking over the last 2 remaining monsters. For turn, and under Domain Lock, our opponent draws the sword they put back last turn. We'll activate Prime Monarch at end step, and tribute summon a copy of Seleg... I'm not going to say it right. We get in for lethal. Who cares? So we're back with the deck, and more than a lesson about the power of this archetype, I want to impart this is a lesson about the power of selective editing. You have no idea how many bricks I cut out. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1, it's playable. I was skeptical, but this is the best the deck has felt since the original banning. It's more consistent than it ever was, even at full power, and Stormforth and Domain still interact with cards in a way most meta threats can't handle. 2, Selegria is insane. I didn't expect it to be as good as it is, but as a searchable Stormforth plus an OTK tool, it's leagues better than Kuraz ever was. And 3, it's cheap. I think the entire deck runs you like $30. I cannot express how glad I am that Souls didn't make the final cut. And the cons. 1, it's still bricky! The year is 2020, half our deck is draw spells, and it's still bricky! I don't even know what to do about it anymore. This is just how Monarch is. 2, Domain isn't nearly as strong as it has historically been. Yes, locking the extra does often win you the game on the spot. No, it does not do so with enough frequency to be your normal game plan. And 3, imagine. The year is 2020. Konami has printed cards that literally say you win the game at 2 mat generic in the extra deck, and your response is, no thanks, I don't need it. Shameful. All in all, it's the best the deck has been in years, but unfortunately, history has largely eclipsed our oppressive pals. So that's that. As always, thanks to my patrons, Meatmoto27, Dominic Ernst, Hakuo, Alex Perea, Candyman, Koibo275, Crispy, Dimsum05, Intercrest, King Magic Ruler, Lavender Lemonade, Meteor Mirage, Mike Carlotti, Rocky Hernandez, Rose Lapine, Seeker, Space Dandy 1993, Stevie Blunder, Tyler Slacks, Tyrese Biggums IV, Adam Trevino, Adrian Bra, Amid Elefandi, Algis Marcinkavicius, Alice Rethi, Andrew Benson, Andrew Horseman Lindren, Angry Bread, Apex Systems, Billy Williams, Blake Root, Candide, Chad Bortz, Chess Prime, Chibi Gohan, Chorps Away, CJ Alex, Cobbin, Connor Kid, Dan the Man Hoban, Darcy Taves, Devin Dees, Dylan Conley, Donnie Fillerup, Distrin, Emperor Stove, Ernesto Ibarra, Fighting Fangwong, FUTR, Gamer Games, Gavin Charlikowski, Isaac Jackson, Jaden Ya, Jared Lorman, Jason Leonard, Jeff Leonard, Jose Luis Cortez, Kybecorp Shill, Corey Hess, Kurokaze, Lawrence, Lucas Geardis, Lucky Number 5, Lucas Aritzo Hansen, Meadow Edits, Mezzo Emrys, Michael Oskavark, Miyuna Arashi, Nick Extreme 99, Nick Dolores, Pro FP2, Pro Yugidad, Samsoon, Sean Dial, Second, Standards Objective, Swag Kage, Yuri's Best, Zach Jenchuski, Zach McKee, Bleh, Dive Missile, Picnic Blasted, This Machine 237, TJ Steakhouse, and Yukie. If you like what you see, please consider subscribing. And if you want to be part of the process, consider following me on Twitch as well. See you next time.